Hello there, guys. Today we are at the Gallery Podcast Studio, and today we've got Mark Jones on, and he's basically going to come on and tell us about some of the work he does. The reason we've got Mark Jones on today is because he's carried out some very impactful and helpful work for Cube. So we'd like to get him on to sort of highlight him, the work he does, and also how he's helped us at Cube since we got going. So, Mark, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks for having me on, Jake. I'm Mark Jones. I'm director at Higher Plane, which sounds grand, but it's me, myself, and I. So I'm like an independent academic, but I also have a few kind of sort of honorary visiting positions. So I'm visiting professor at University South Wales and honorary professor at Swansea University.
We'll start off at the beginning of your story.
Great.
How did you get into this type of work?
So going right back, I did a psychology degree in Birmingham and played basketball to a really high level. This is probably a bit of a long way getting there, but I don't know. I quite like that. I quite like looking back and thinking how I got into youth work, because I'm a youth worker by trade, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Does basketball have anything to play with it, like being a team player?
Yeah, maybe, but that's how I got into youth work, through basketball and that notion of team. So I worked on an inner city project in Birmingham with a fellow basketball friend who's still a really good friend today. And I was part of a project that used basketball to engage what might be called disengaged, hard to reach, all of those terms. Young boys, young men transition into adulthood, and use basketball as a way of engaging with those young men and young boys, and kind of teaching teamwork, self-respect, good communication, leadership, all that kind of good stuff, really. And I look back and say it was youth work. It was probably by definition, a sports development program. But the idea was that it was a specific group of on the margins of crime. You might say youth justice, that kind of thing, or I would say youth justice kind of work now.
Yeah, they're like one foot in, 1 foot out kind of guys.
Yeah, it's that kind of diversion stuff, And I absolutely loved it. And at the time, I wanted to be a child psychologist or something like that. And then I just thought, no, I want to do this. And I wasn't quite sure what this was in some ways, because I knew it wasn't just sport. And then I had a placement year, and I had friends that went to Swansea Uni, and I got a job for a year as part of like my placement experience for the year with Swansea Youth Service. And then also as a residential child care worker, which is kind of like social work, social care, not qualified social work, but where children are taken into care because of a variety of reasons. And then you sort of support them whilst they're in temporary accommodation before they either go back home or get into foster care or in some cases adoption.
Okay.
So that was a full-on year, but I knew straight away, kind of doing some work in Blind and Mice in Swansea, that youth work was what I wanted to do. And I wanted to be a kind of a youth worker. Finished off my degree, had a little stop off in London doing something slightly different in terms of charity fundraising. And then moved back to South Wales in 2003, 2004, and then started doing youth work stuff, become professionally qualified in youth work as well, got my master's in that.
Awesome.
And then as you get more experience, you kind of, when I say you go up, you take on more responsibility. And then eventually that led to me teaching youth work at Cardiff Met from I think 2008 to 2013, 14. So I taught youth work on the undergraduate and postgraduate programs. And then I moved to Swansea Uni, because I was living in Swansea anyway. And to be honest, the drive, and it was that kind of, I need to change something here. I was driving so much, getting really tired. At that point, I had 2 young kids. And then sort of did work-based learning stuff with broadly health at Swansea. But then I was fortunate enough to kind of get promoted, and I became head of adult learning and was like a associate professor in education then, and did that for a number of years. And then towards the end of 2019, I kind of realised that HE is brilliant, and HE is brilliant. I'm obviously working within higher education is brilliant. I'm kind of working obviously with Swansea Uni and University South Wales now. I'm actually involved in current projects, which I can talk about in a minute. But I wasn't doing enough of what I thought I needed to do, and also what my skill set was, which I thought was engaging people and actually trying to make direct change. So I really enjoy and actually miss teaching in higher education. And I do a bit of education and training now, but they are different. But I really wanted to get more into research, really. And I didn't do a load of research when I was in higher education. It was much more managing teams, running programs, teaching, and a little bit of research and a little bit of writing. So I started Higher Plane in 2020. And so Higher Plane's been going for 6 years now. After a couple of years, I got that visiting professor thing at University South Wales, and then about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, I got the honorary professor thing at Swansea University. And so largely what I do now, I'd call it like the main umbrella is anti-oppressive practice. So it's about researching, evaluating, engaging with people, groups and communities that are often unrepresented, often unheard or not listened to, and kind of working with them, not to them or on them, so that they can create change and I can support them to make change. And that might be through an evaluation like with Cube, which I'll talk about in a bit, or it might be research, and research can still be an evaluation, but it might be through a research kind of effort, and then sharing that with, say, regional networks and groups or Welsh government or central government. So I kind of do that kind of stuff. And I've been doing that for 6 years. And as I think I was saying before we actually started today, I'm really proud of what I do. And I made a promise to myself with Higher Plane that I'd only take what I would call value-based work. So it's that anti-oppressive thing that I mentioned earlier. But the other thing I'm really proud of is that I try to, and often mostly, use what you might call narrative approaches, where it's listening to people's lived experience, it's valuing people's lived experience, it's trying to capture it in the true words that they use, and working with those individuals, groups and communities to share that then to people that are in power.
Yeah.
So I'm really proud of, I feel I do that. That's something I feel like I can show that I've done.
It's important work, ultimately, because how do the people in power hear the stories that need telling to them in order to sort of give them an accurate reflection of what people in the community are going through? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. And there are some people in power that have lived experience and living experience, and there are obviously really well qualified people and really people that are in the know. But there's still groups that fall through the gaps. There's still groups that are underrepresented in all areas of our life, you know?
I suppose it's, like, from that position, impossible to be sort of omniscient, you know, to see the whole picture all the time, you know?
Absolutely. And that's why, and again, I want to say there's loads of great researchers out there. I'm proud of what I do, but there's loads of other people that shine light on other areas that I don't research, if that makes sense. And you're absolutely right. I think you need that creativity and that collection of people, whether they're community-based researchers, academics, practitioners, again, that actually do kind of research in the community, even though they're not pure researchers, they bring those voices to the table.
Yeah.
And then obviously you've got peers as well, like whether that's voluntary or paid, that kind of are in roles where they get to sort of say, look, this is what I went through, this is what the people I'm supporting are go through, and these are the things that need to change because I know, because I've been there.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I guess in summary, that's the kind of stuff I do. I do quite small scale, working with smaller charities that might just be in, say, one locality, like Cube, although Cube's small in some respect, it does massive things.
It does. Yeah.
And then I also have worked on national scale stuff as well. So, like, you know, working alongside the key main criminal justice institutions and Welsh government to, like, write national policy as well. So I really like the variety of my work, and, you know, I kind of write evaluations that are for the community and for organisations, but I kind of do that academic kind of writing as well, you know, like books, journals, chapters, that kind of stuff. And then a bit of conference presentations when budget and money and all that allows, you know.
I was going to say, what are the sort of in those lines of work that you've carried out, what have been the biggest challenges for you? Whether it be practices for local authority that are a bit outdated, or like anything kind of like that?
Starting off, I think the main thing was, even though some people knew who I was, there's lots of universities, lots of academics, being an independent academic is actually, I think, from what I can gather, is increasing in terms of sort of a career choice, because we've got universities that are actually downsizing their staff and their workforce. So you've got more people, if you like me, exploring that individual academic kind of approach. But so initially it was kind of the biggest challenge for me was kind of getting known and being seen as credible and legitimate.
Yeah.
And that was a challenge, but it was one that over about a year or so, by doing what I believe is good work and having those conversations, I kind of had to reprove myself and re-legitimize myself in a sense. So through doing good work that I'm proud of, I think that that showed that credibility and that expertise. And I think some of the other big challenges sometimes are, again, put two ends of the spectrum. When you work with a smaller charity or a smaller CIC, in a sense, the evaluation or the research is easier because it's smaller scale. So it's quite local, but you get really deep, vibrant stories, narratives, and truths, like with the Cube stuff. But then trying to shine a light on that and influence at maybe a national level in terms of like, look at this project here, you really need to invest in projects like this and try and be the independent academic, but also who has a responsibility really to share really powerful, impactful work and try and enact change at that kind of national level for funding, or for people in the Welsh Government or other institutions to notice really good work that's done at a more grassroots local level. So that's a challenge for sure. But then equally, when I've worked at a national level with multiple institutions, so say I might be working with HMPPS, the police forces, obviously HMPPS includes prisons and probation, and then HMCTS, Her Majesty's Crown, Her Majesty's Courts and Tribunal Services, CPS, Crown Prosecution Service, and then other big organisations that might be the third sector like CLINCS, trying to navigate all that. And obviously each big institution has different cultures. Also within Wales, we work within devolved and non-devolved. So there's some institutions that have a central thread to government in London, if you like, and then there's some that are governed through Wales. So
quite difficult to navigate.
Yeah, it's really difficult to navigate. And that's the challenge there, where you have to navigate the system. Sometimes cultures and terminology and even language use is slightly different or accepted. You know, whether you use the term racism, institutional racism, unconscious bias, conscious bias, some of those kind of words kind of land differently in different institutions just because of the culture and history of that institution, and also where it's centrally governed from. So that's sometimes a challenge. So really the biggest challenge, I guess what I'm saying in a roundabout way, whether it's local or national, influencing change is hard. And I think I'm not learning that per se, but I still think I'm ever learning into that and leaning into that and working out how to best tell the story of those people that I'm trying to share the stories of, essentially, or the organisation I'm trying to share the impact of. And I think we always learn, right? And certainly my mind
forever learning.
It's forever learning. And I heard a lovely quote the other day, actually. Minds are like parachutes. If they're not open, they don't work. And so I really like that as a quote.
I like that as well. No,
and it's kind of like I always try and keep my mind open because I have to keep learning. I think that's that curious mind and that's quite exciting to keep learning as well. So yeah, they're kind of my challenges, I think.
Right, wicked. So yeah, Mark, could you go on then to sort of explain how did you get in touch with Cube and meet like the directors, Lisa and Tammy?
Yeah, it was actually kind of a chance meeting. Tammy is obviously in the voluntary sector. That's how you'd say Cube is. And she was at a voluntary sector network meeting with CLINCS. So CLINCS is like a voluntary sector membership organisation, and it advocates and supports the voluntary sector in making an impact, and kind of also really magnifies how important the voluntary sector is to statutory organisations, sector, and the government, essentially. And so I was actually presenting some of the research I'd done on a previous project, and I'm being honest, I can't remember what that project was now, but Tammy emailed me afterwards and just said, I really like the way that you presented the evaluation or research that you did. We're looking for something similar at Cube. Can we have a chat? So I met with Tammy. I think it was just Tammy in the first meeting. But essentially what they wanted is that they'd been hearing and listening to the voices of the community for about 6 months to 12 months. And there were a few gaps in their provision. And also the practitioners, Lisa and Tammy included, had started to notice with the families and people they were working with that there was some significant challenges going on, specifically for men, specifically for children, as you might describe, in transition from primary to secondary. And then the third one actually was they got a project called Side by Side, and people that were in it and going through it and have coming out the end of it were like, why don't more people know about this? So rather than Tammy, Lisa and James and the other team sort of say, look, this is exactly what we need to do, they wanted an independent community engagement to actually ask the community, ask children, ask families, ask men, ask women who used the gallery upstairs, and also access the services, what they felt they needed, if there were any new projects or any new funding in Barry at the Cube. And what came out of that 2-day engagement, I wrote a report for it, was that there indeed did need to be a child sort of transition youth clubby type provision that supported children and young people in a lot of diverse and quite complex sort of experiences and needs. And then the other one was that there was a growing number of men that just felt increasingly isolated and unable to ask for help, or have tried to access services and didn't feel they did help. And then finally, there were a group of families that engaged and were just like, look, you really need to, as an organisation, you really need to share how powerful Side by Side is. It saved our family. It saved our lives. So Tammy had funding to do, to start those projects. So she started a children's transition project, which ran once a week for a group of children and young people. And again, Men's Project was piloted as well, which was a kind of, it's that kind of, if you read sort of the grey literature or the literature, or even spoke to men that had kind of been to men's groups, it's that kind of shoulder to shoulder thing, sitting in the circle and sharing. And as we know, right, men have really low health seeking behaviour. They'd rather grin and bear it because that's what men do. You know, you get
it's the way we're raised.
It's the
isn't
way
it?
we're raised, and it's that generational thing. And actually, again, it's probably that working class thing as well. You know, I'm from a working class background, and
Tough it out.
I was told like not to cry as a kid because that's what wimps do. You know that kind of thing, right? And so those two projects ran, and I was then asked if I could evaluate the men's group, the children's transition project, and evaluate Side by Side. And Side by Side was a more in-depth evaluation, so not just sort of asking people that have been through it what it did and how it impacted them, as well as the practitioners about how it worked and how they supported people, but almost creating, defining and analysing their model of practice. So we come up with 9 pillars of practice at Side by Side. So that's how I met Tammy. And that...
Could I just ask quickly?
Yeah, of course you can.
Just because it reminds me of, is it in any way related to like the 4 pillars of Islam in any way?
It's not. No. It isn't.
Yeah, okay.
This idea of pillars of practice is actually, well, clearly in the Quran, is it? Yeah.
I'm not sure. I saw a video on the 4 pillars of Islam, and
Right,
it's like
okay.
they're basically like 4 structures of values that I think most religions cover.
Yeah.
You know, I can't really refer to anything specific right now, but I remember thinking like, you know, if you did live by these 4 pillars, essentially, you would live a good and better life. Do you know what I mean? But I think I'm correlating 2 things that aren't correlated.
But, no, I don't know. I think that if you looked at the 9 pillars, and I've got my notes. I'm not going to remember all 9 just out of my head, and my memory's not that good. But I will go. But they are kind of like they're like North Stars. These 9 pillars are like Cube's North Star of how it guides its practice and how it does its practice and why it is so successful. So I think I first met Tammy in early 2022, and I've been working with Tammy for about 3.5, 4 years. And, you know, I think Cube is a brilliant community infrastructure, a brilliant community resource. And so I'm sort of here today because I'm a big advocate of promoting really good practice. Ultimately, you know, it links into what I would argue anyway is all the best practice that you can kind of highlight in terms of restorative practices. It's a restorative practice organisation. So it follows those. Oops,
That's
sorry.
all right.
I just hit the mic.
We do. I do it all the time, boxing. Yeah.
So it follows the kind of restorative practice kind of guidelines, and there are pillars for restorative practice in certain bits of literature. But I think it's got its own similarly defined 9 pillars. And so I just thought it'd be really nice is such a rubbish word, but I just thought it would be good to share that in a different format. I share Cube's work in networks and forums, and again, there will be a journal article at some point, and I've shared it with Welsh Government and other key stakeholder groups. But I thought the podcast offer would just be really lovely to come here today and sort of share it. So
thank you very much for coming in as well. Because
I don't think those that perhaps hold the purse strings, and I want to say this as well, Cube's amazing. There are other really amazing organisations as well, but I just think that once an organisation like Cube does what it does, if it were to not exist, it would be very, very detrimental to the health of this community. I mean, in the research that I did, the evaluations that I did, we've got quotes like, I promise you, if Lisa wasn't there to guide me, if Cube wasn't here, I would be dead. And you've got mums and dads that have lost children because they're going through really difficult, hard times because of safeguarding stuff, who are getting their children back now because of the support that Cube has given to those parents to actually accept responsibility and accountability for their actions without judgment, though, from support from Lisa and Tammy and the team, and rebuild their lives and actually rebuild themselves. One of the models I did sort of use as an analysis tool was CHIME, right? So CHIME stands for connection, hope, identity, meaning, and empowerment. And what Cube manages to do through their model is it creates positive connection. So people feel more connected to themselves, actually, but to their community. They feel increased hope and optimism because they can see a positive future, especially because the people that are supporting the families have lived experience themselves. So they're living, breathing models of, I can, it is possible.
Yeah.
And then you've got M for meaning, through working on self, through developing skills and tools to be able to be more emotionally regulated, for example, and using adult brain and rationale rather than emotion and anger. There's meaning in life. You've got greater meaning, and there's identity, developing positive identities in parenting, in terms of relationships, in terms of identity to the community, and then ultimately as well. Then you've got empowerment. I mixed up the I and the M there, but you get what I mean. It's basically helping people to feel greater connection, increased hope, develop positive identities, have greater meaning and positive meaning in their life, and also then feeling empowered so that they can enact change in their life. So
sounds like the sort of people that would fit those who have lost a sense of belonging in a weird way.
And again, absolutely, like feeling belonging in self. I belong in this space as me. I belong in this community. I belong as having the label as mum and dad or son or absolutely. And we know that if you feel belonging, then it's one of the building blocks to feel that you can do something, you can, rather than I can't. So it's that strengths perspective as well.
Yeah. All right then. So Mark, could you divulge a little bit more about the 9 pillars?
Yeah,
for
sure.
me? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am looking at notes right now just because that is going to help sort of, make sure that I'm accurate. I think that's important.
Brother, I could remember 9 words in a row if I had to. So.
I think memory's like 7 ± 2, but these are sentences. So yeah, the first one that was really clear, and this was analysing like dialogue focus groups with the Cube practitioners, also allied groups as well, but then also families, and this come across through children, young adults, and mums and dads, or mums or dads. So this is what kind of come out of it. And so the 9 pillars for side by side is that it builds trust and it respects and it's honest, which really landed. There's also the second pillar is no judgment with a focus on learning and growth. So much stigma and self shame, if you like, with people when they've been through a lot of negative things. And so that no judgment's so important. Expert practitioners who are also experts through experience. So everybody in the side by side, the Cube team, have had their own learning journey, their own lived experience. So they've faced similar things to the experiences of the people they're supporting. So that's really important. There's professional caring with consistency and commitment. One of the things that really stood out is most families, when they have access to other services, kind of feel that they get 5 or 6 weeks and then there you go, that's your lot, move on. And that kind of pass the parcel, hot potato kind of thing.
You've been processed.
You've been processed, that kind of thing. Sharing power and working together. So it's not about solving everyone's problems and doing things for people. It's sharing power and it's working together so that there's that self-agency, there's that empowerment that's happening. The whole model is about dialogue and discussion, and so there's this real need for reflection and critical discussion. So reflection and learning from previous experiences and previous triggers and behaviors and that kind of stuff. And then it's creating tools for life and parenting. So actually developing self so you're better able to navigate parenting and navigate your own, in some cases, and often it is the case, your own traumas, so that you're aware of your triggers, so that you've got that kind of emotional cognitive control and you're in your adult parenting mode. Another one, and I love this one, is humour and humanity. And so I want to read a quote because I think it captures.
Yeah. Okay.
I've been supported through such dark times, and there has always been humour there. It's helped so much as a little spark or light in the darkness. And then another quote there, without a few laughs, I'd be dead. Honestly, it seems weird perhaps, but I've been through so much and it's all so dark that being able to laugh about it all with Elisa is a way of getting over it. And that's powerful, right? Because this is serious work that changes people's lives and maybe, as we just heard, saves it. But without a few laughs, it's just unbearable. And I really love that pillar.
Definitely.
It's just, I think that's not enough. And maybe that's something like professional love as well. I don't know, but humor and humanity. And then the other thing, that the final pillar, is that it's about every individual in the family, but it's also about whole family support. So it's about supporting individuals on their own individual learnings and pathways, but where appropriate and without risk and with safeguarding, bringing that family together. And that could even be split up parents, so they can co-parent whilst in not cohabiting, but still be in a family.
Yeah.
And so that individual and whole family support was the 9th pillar. So yeah, I'm a brilliant project. And I feel a privilege to be asked into those people's lives and for them to share it. And so, yeah, I just really proud of the work. And I think, yeah, what Cube does is quite unique and very powerful.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. I just want to sort of move on to, because the conversation's sort of coming to a close now. What things are you working on at the moment?
So I've got quite a lot at the moment. So I'm currently involved with an AllPac funded research bid. And AllPac stands for All Wales Academic and Police Collaboration. So it's a Wales-wide academic and with all the universities and the police forces. And so I'm currently working with Swansea University and University South Wales, and predominantly South Wales, although we are delivering training to all the Welsh police forces. So we're going up to North Wales and we're doing Dyfed Powys as well. And what's come out in the literature is those with really complex needs that perhaps if you're just a sort of citizen and you're walking around town, you might notice some people that are going through a bit of a hard time, that are on street corners, sitting on the floor. There's some pretty negative labels and stigma and terminology that some people might use for those sorts of people, but those people have really complex challenges. They're navigating homelessness, they're navigating addiction, they might be navigating domestic violence, they might be navigating exploitation, or even things like modern slavery, mental health problems. And so quite often that behaviour can be criminalised. So you get a lot of police responses in those situations, and sometimes, and the police act really, really supportively, and they kind of even defer to health services, but sometimes they don't as well. So in that way, sometimes those groups and communities can feel quite stigmatized and criminalized. So we're working with a group of lived experience group with Swansea, Neath and Port Talbot, and a brilliant project there called the Leaf Group. And they're helping us co-create some education and training for the police forces on how to be more trauma informed as a first responder going into those sorts of situations. So rather than jump into conclusions of crime, if you like, and violence, or worrying about the public, maybe there's another way of sort of assessing and thinking about those situations. And yeah, the police have been a great partner in that, and we're delivering training throughout September, and then we'll be evaluating that and sharing the findings through the AllPac network. So that's pretty cool. I think that's I really love that work. And just to highlight as well, we did two focus groups with South Wales Police as well, and using their experiences of trauma, and even trauma through being a police person, and how that
yeah,
helps
that's
them.
one thing we never sort of consider, is that I only thought, because I lost my brother about 5 years ago.
Sorry,
and it was some. Thank you, but it was something I never really considered until after I'd lost my brother. It was like the police were stood outside the front of the house. They would let me in because obviously it's now a crime scene.
Yeah.
And it was like after that, I thought, fucking hell, I couldn't be a copper. I couldn't be a police officer. Sorry, because imagine that, having to one, go in there, witness something like that, and then two, stand outside the house and say, like, so, they were really good with me. Don't get me wrong; they were really nice and respectful. But ultimately, they got their job to do, and I don't know if I could do it.
Yeah, it's a super hard job, and I think there is so much commitment and willing to sort of increase. I mean, the educational learning that police people workforce go through anyway is is that there's a lot of opportunities there. It's mammoth,
yeah.
yeah. And so actually working in partnership, and I love that about my work, working in partnership with big institutions, but also keeping it real with literally listening to people that have lived it and still are living it, and creating something that's meaningful and co-created through all of that. I think it's really powerful. So that's a really cool project that is we're delivering next month. So that's great. Really excited about that. Just started a piece of research on evaluating peer models in Cardiff and Vale for those that are accessing mental health and or substance use services. So that's been commissioned for Cardiff and Vale Health Board, and that has been a really powerful project so far. So just trying to pull out good practice, identify gaps, and therefore recommend good practice, recommend where we can develop practice in terms of embedding more lived experience within services, more co-creation, but also what can we learn from those currently in peer roles? How do we make it safer, better? Do we need career pathways, for example, like set pathways for peer roles? That's a really rewarding piece of work. They're my two main projects at the moment, and I haven't started yet. Literally had the sort of initial meeting today, but I've also just recently got some funding through the Foundation, which is a sort of a charity of Lloyds Bank, and they do a load of work across the UK actually, but they work in Merthyr, and I'm going to be looking and exploring, doing research on elected home education and those that are excluded from school, and the effects that has on families and those children, young people, and why they might disengage from school and what issues they may be facing, and how do we ensure that they have a good educational pathway and are supported. So that's like a multi-sector, again, like I'd be working with schools, youth justice, youth services, a load of voluntary sector organisations, and then kind of finding out, and really the heartbeat of the project, as is always the case with most of, if not all the work I do, is really focusing on children, young people and parents' experiences of what they need to be better supported for their children's education and therefore life chances and aspirations and all that stuff. And so they're kind of like the three main projects at the moment. Again, that will be going on now until probably like March, April for all of those projects. So yeah, really excited about that and where they'll go, because they might lead on to other bits of work, another change. So yeah, really excited about that.
Awesome. No, that's amazing. And just to finish, man, I got to hear about your books. You got to tell me about your books. You seem like such an interesting guy. And
it's funny. Oh, I don't know. I'd always wanted to write a book, and I do. I've done a lot of work with someone called Debbie Jones, and she's the. Sorry, Debbie, if I get the title wrong. But I met Debbie when I don't know, 20 years ago or so, probably. When I was at Cardiff Met, and I was doing my PhD with Professor Kevin Haynes at Swansea Uni, and I met Debbie. She was the manager at the time of the Student Sex Work Project, working with Professor Tracy Sagar, and we just clicked and just stayed in contact. And now I do quite a bit of work at the All Pack project with the police. That I'm doing that with Debbie, and I said to Debbie, look, we did a few lovely bits of research on this area called desistance. So essentially, what conditions do people need to refrain from criminal activity? So almost like, what are the building blocks for somebody to have a good life where they thrive and can sort of gain greater empowerment and change, really, you know? So like positive identities, positive connections, all that kind of stuff. And we did a bit of a symposium conference thing with other academics that did other really brilliant bits of work. One of them, for example, was running degree programs in prison in Cardiff, I believe it was. And Debbie and I finished the symposium, and we were like, every single one of those presentations could be a chapter in a book. And Debbie was like, yeah.
Bingo.
Shall we? Yeah, full house. Yeah. And so shall we do it? And so we did it. And so there's a book about, basically we called it Public Criminology. It's with Palgrave Macmillan. It got published in, 2022, 2023.
Recent.
And it's been released sort of, I believe, internationally. And there's two books that you said. Yeah, I'm really proud of that book. I think it's a really, really good book. And there's lots of chapters that we didn't write. So I'm not just saying, I think I'm really brilliant. It was an edited collection, and there's some amazing academics, researchers. And there's also there's a lived experience chapter there as well, from a friend of mine and colleague called Jacob Henry. And Jacob Henry has been through the criminal justice system in lots of different ways, and now does an amazing charity called Vibe Youth CIC with his partner, Karen Henry, and they do great work, relational youth work, really. And he's got an interview with me, and that's formed a chapter in that book as well. So I really like the vibrancy of this book. And then the other book that Debbie and I did, sorry, just to say, Public Criminology was with 2 other authors as well. Sorry, Anthony Charles and Professor Katie Strudwick as well. So sorry that
you got them in there.
It's the link with Debbie that kind of got us in there, as it were. And then Debbie and I wrote a book last year, I think it was, and that was just about how higher education, right, you'd think is this really liberal think tank kind of open blue sky thinking.
You would assume so.
And it is in many ways, but actually there's still these areas where some people with certain identities kind of don't get into that space very often. So we wrote a book because we think it was needed, again with some amazing other colleagues, again a smaller book. It's another edited collection, and it was basically about, when you take some of these marginalized groups and identities, how do we make higher education more inclusive? So it was about basically how do we increase the diversity with those studying in undergraduate and postgraduate programs in higher education. And again, really proud for that book as well. But if I had to say which one was better, I think the Public Criminology one is probably a bit better. But yeah, lovely to write 2 books. I never thought, growing up in Hereford, that I would write a book, and I've co-written 2 now, so I'm super proud of that. And yes, kind of surreal in a way.
No, congratulations. And just also, if people wanted to find out more about you, where could I send them?
I did say to you earlier as well, didn't I? But my website needs a revamp for sure. It's like 5-6 years.
It's
old.
Informative.
It's informative, but it's it needs a bit of a revamp. But yeah, you can find me at Higher Plane Research Education.co.uk. And I'm also on LinkedIn. But basically, if you Googled Mark Jones Higher Plane, you'll find my website, and from there you can sort of look at some of the reports and evaluations that I've done, and yeah, if that floats your boat, then do give a click and have a look. And yeah, that's kind of me. And I also just wanted to say thanks for inviting me here today as well, Jake. And it's been really nice to sort of meet you briefly as well. And I'm going to say, yeah, I'm the project, the peer project I mentioned for Cardiff and Vale, we may be working together again in the future, maybe on this on a recovery voices thing. So maybe we'll work together in terms of that in a couple of months' time. But if not, it's just been really nice to meet you. Thanks for having me today.
No, thank you too, Mark. All right, take it easy, dude.
Nice one, mate.
We're going to finish there, all right?
Brilliant. Cheers.
Cheers, mate.